Welcome back to Mark Holubit's vlog. Thanks for joining in today, guys, on this very cold 0 degrees Celsius kind of a day. Today, I have a little story for you I need to share with you guys. This is serious. This is getting to be downright silly. Today, let's take out the F-Type for a drive. While we do that, I'm going to explain the whole story, but for the time being, I'm going to show you the Lamborghini Gallardo. The reason I need to show you that is because of today's story. And that is, this car is absolutely exceptional. Every time I get in the Lamborghini, it just gives me tingles up and down the spine. Sure, there's faster cars. As a matter of fact, the F-Type, I would say, is arguably a little bit quicker. 0.2 to 100 kilometers an hour, maybe, somewhere in there anyway. But it doesn't matter. The Lamborghini brings something out in you, the little kid in you, the little 5-year-old that just saw a great fast car for the first time. But there's a problem with it. You'll notice I've got the trunk lid open here. I need to show you a couple things before we go for a ride in the Jag. First of all, you know this is an E-gear. When I say E-gear, it means that it's an automated manual. You'll notice there's no stick shift. You essentially have a few buttons to change the mode, and you have paddle shifters. It's an automated manual, very crude system, not like the dual clutch transmissions of today. You'll also notice this is just a hollow pedal. But really, there's only two pedals, gas and brake. And again, only paddle shifters. You can put it in auto mode, that's trash, but these cars are essentially automated manual. And let me show you what that looks like in the back. So pop the hood. Awesome V10 motor. Yes, where's the transmission? Well, the transmission is tucked down in here, and you can barely see it. But with these V10 cars, what you have is you've got the engine, you've got the clutch, and then the gearbox is actually in the tail end here. It's tucked away at the very end. Versus a Murcielago. If you bought a V12 Lamborghini, it's the other way around. The gearbox is actually in front of the engine, and it becomes a very, very big job to do a clutch or any kind of maintenance. And when you do a clutch job, for example, on a Murcielago, which it's not uncommon, that's why people don't drive them because they're very expensive, that means you've got to take the engine, clutch, gearbox out. The whole thing must come out of the car, set on the floor to work on. You can imagine what that costs, just to disassemble all the hoses and the connections and then lift that big bulk, that big hulk of an engine and transmission out in one foul swoop as well. There's lots of risk in scratching the bodywork and whatnot. Of course, always a bit of a risk. Now, to do a clutch in a Gallardo like I have right here, it's not so bad. It just basically means you've got to take off the bumper, then you've got to take off what you see. It's hard to tell, but there's the exhaust system under here. Then you've also got to take off, these air boxes, and there's some other things. You've got to undo the axle connections. But then the gearbox essentially comes off, and then you have exposure to the clutch. So it's not that invasive of a procedure, and the engine gets to stay in the car. But lo and behold, why are we talking about that? It's because I believe the clutch is finally gone in the Lamborghini Gallardo, and it's a very, very sad day, guys. Very sad day for me. Let's explain. So do I have to accept the fact that I'm in the Jag now for a while without being able to drive the Lamborghini? Is that an adequate trade-off? Do you guys think that the Jag is as good as the Lambo for driving experience? What are your thoughts? I'll tell you right now, for me, like I said, the Lamborghini is just a special drive. Sure, an Aventador is even better, and I mean, there's all kinds of certain layers that are better, but honestly, the Gallardo is still has the essence of the Lambo. It's kind of what they call a baby Lambo, but it's still a lot of fun, has the looks, has the sound. Every time you drive, every gear you shift in that car is an event. It's loud, it's obnoxious, and there's no real smooth way of driving the car, not really intentionally. I mean, you can baby it along, and short shift it, but really, every time you're downshifting, it feels like a big event because it matches revs and it blows a real loud sound out of the exhaust. It's an awesome ride. But anyway, sharing along with the story, what had happened the other day, I took a trip down to St. Albert. I went for a drive with the wife, and we decided we were going to go stop down at the Italian bakery down in St. Albert. We went for a little rip and decided to, stop in. So we parked the car and we got out, went, did some shopping, came out, and lo and behold, as I turned the ignition on the Lambo, it started fine, but the E-gear of death light showed up. And what that is it's a big red light that shows up in the middle of your display, and it says E-gear, and it has this kind of red, almost like a heartbeat pulse symbol on it, and it's kind of a zigzag. It's a really scary thing to see on these cars, because whenever you see the E-gear light, it usually means trouble. There's a lot of different things that can go wrong on the E-gear system, and that's why a lot of guys are going with the manuals, and that's why the gated manual cars are going up in price, because the simplicity of the manuals are a little bit better and lower running costs overall for the long term, likely. And of course, E-gear cars, they're faster, they're quicker, they're fun to drive too, but it's the additional maintenance and repairs when they finally break. So if you get an E-gear light, there's lots of different things depending on whether it's a flashing light or if it's a solid light. I'm not going to get into all the diagnostics, but it could be a whole number of things, from burst E-gear lines to low pressure or low volume of E-gear fluid. It's a hydraulic fluid essentially. It could be a bad actuator. That's the actual part that's mounted to the gearbox and changes the gears. Could be a bad pump. And the pump is what you hear when you open the door and it primes. You hear that buzzing when you open the door on these Lambos. I'm not sure if you've ever heard that, but that's the pump. If you have a weird noise or a kind of an awkward sounding noise or inconsistent noise or no noise at all whenever you open the door, that could tell you you've got a bad pump. Or it could just be other things. It could be a door sensor, could be actually the actual wear sensor. In actuality, in most cases, it is just the clutch, and the clutch is telling you it's done. Now, I have some records that go back to tell me that the clutch was done about 15,000 kilometers ago. And you're probably thinking to yourself, 15,000 kilometers on a clutch? How could that be? Well, the Lamborghinis, their clutches launch very, very quickly. And while that might be on the low end of the scale, it's not that far out of the realm of possibility. I mean, I spoke to the dealer, and honestly, it's not uncommon to see clutches go anywhere from 12 to 20,000 kilometers, and that would put me somewhere kind of in the middle of that range. Now, I know I've taken on a lot of the good habits. I rarely, the things that you don't want to do then the Lamborghini is back up a whole lot. I mean, sure, you need to use reverse sometimes, but try to minimize that, and don't slip the clutch. Minimize the amount of clutch slippage, and the car runs essentially like a manual, and the way you feather the throttle will sort of dictate how much slippage that you'll get in the clutch as it engages, almost like driving a manual transmission. Kind of think of it that way, treat it that way. So the bad habits are, of course, too much slippage in reverse, too much slippage stop-go traffic is hard on it, tons of hard launches with a kind of a 0 to full throttle launch. I mean, you should always engage the clutch before you get hard on the throttle. That's another tough one. And often people say throw it in sport mode, because what it does is it's a quicker engagement to the clutch, so it does less slipping already as well. So there's lots of little habits that you can incorporate to extend the life of your clutch. Now, I've incorporated a lot of that, and so I can speak to the way I've treated it, and I've certainly done my best to try to extend the life on the clutch. But again, I bought the car used, and I didn't buy it at the point where the clutch was just done. I bought it 5,000 or 6,000 kilometers after what I perceived as what the history said the clutch was done. So what the previous owner did, and judging by the way he took me for the test drive, it doesn't really surprise me. I mean, in retrospect, the way he drove it was pretty aggressively, and that's just when I was along for a ride. So I couldn't imagine if this guy, if he's out and about tooling around with his buddies, what that ended up looking like. And unfortunately, I have to think that maybe that took its toll. But again, stop and go. I got stuck in some rush hour traffic up a big long hill here last year because the police were filtering a bunch of folks that were getting off at Horlack Park, and we were going up the hill, and I had to stop and go probably 40 times to get up that hill because you'd move about 5 feet. Now, another bad habit is to move every 5 feet like those guys in their nice little automatic transmissions in front of you. Don't follow suit. Let them move up 3 or 4 or 5 car lengths before you engage every operation. Sure, you'll have people honking their horns at you from behind. Tough shit. That's just the way it is. the next time that they offer to pay you $15,000 to do a clutch, then move every single foot as they want. But until people start, unless people really understand, then the hell with it. You know what? You're the one paying the bill. But let's get to that point. So, I've consulted with a few sources and kind of figured out what a new clutch replacement can look like. And we'll just assume it's a clutch, and we won't talk about actuators because those are big bucks. Pumps can be kind of pricey as well, and e-gear lines are also very pricey. But if it's a routine clutch job with parts and labor, all my sources tell me that you're looking at an $8,000 to $10,000 job, essentially, in Canadian dollars. If you're on the US side of the border, I would expect to pay a little bit less. Exchange is working in your favor, and particularly for parts. So it may be a little bit less, but I would expect no real less than $7,000 or $8,000 anyway, even on the US side of the border. So that's what you can expect to pay. And fortunately, the only reason it's as low cost as it is because, again, all you have to do is pull the bumper off, the gearbox comes out, and the exhaust, and a few other little odds and sods, some sensors and things. But then you ask yourself, well, if I've only got, maybe 3/4 of the kind of typical wear, what makes me think it's a clutch? Well, all things are pointing that way. I'll be honest. The clutch engagement hasn't been quite as nice in recent months, in the last probably 8 to 10 drives. I've felt a bit of a deterioration. Now, I've heard you can sometimes dial in the point of pickup and do some things to kind of improve on that. But I felt a deterioration. Not only that, my buddy Ed there, he pulled a scan on it. He's got the computer that you can plug in, and you plug it into your OBD2 port. And there's actually 2 ports in this car. There's a port that's under the driver's steering wheel, and that port kind of gives you the gearbox and miscellaneous parts. And there's another OBD2 port, or a port equivalent, under the passenger side well, which gives you sort of engine diagnostics. So there's actually 2 ports to access in these cars. But anyway, we plugged in, and they do what they call a snap test, and it tells you sort of the percentage left of wear, because it's all electronic. There's a wear sensor, and it kind of translates back into the computer and tells you how much wear is left on the clutch. And lo and behold, he plugged in, and what I could perceive is I probably had somewhere like 15% clutch life wear left, and that's not a good thing. And that was about a month or 2 months ago, and I had taken out for a few drives since then. So between that, the way it's been driving, and of course, all of those other factors, it's all pointing to the fact that I believe it's just time for a clutch. Now that sucks because, again, we're talking about probably a $10,000 repair bill. But I guess the positive is you get a new lease on life. The other thing is, that's positive, it kind of forces me to maybe look at some other maintenance pieces. When the gearbox is out, it allows you better access to certain things. So it might be an opportunity to take a look around and see if there's any other things that need freshening up. But anyway, that's more to the point. The point is, the Lamborghini looks like it's out of service now for a while. I mean, we're moving in on winter. It's cold today. It's like 0 degrees Celsius, or about 32 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's cold, very, very cold. And rumor has it there's been snow on certain parts of the city already today, which is very unfortunate. But kind of is what it is. We're in middle of October in Alberta. I mean, people say, hey, this is like northern Siberia. I would agree with that. This very much feels like northern Siberia. But anyway, what that means is the Lambo's parked. I'd like to get the clutch done in the fall here, so that come springtime, I can get back behind the wheel of that beast. But for now, driving the Jag, can this car satisfy my driving whims that I like to engage in? Obviously, the Jag is an exceptionally quick car, easy to live with, it sounds great, it goes great. I don't need to tell you about that. I mean, I've explained that whole concept over and over a few times, but this car is absolutely amazing. And it's fast, and literally, yeah, it's faster than the Lambo, I would say. It feels faster by seat of the pants, and even by all accounts, on paper and number, it's definitely faster. Does it have all the same driving dynamics? I would say no, not entirely. It does have a rigid ride, it handles well, it brakes well, it accelerates very well, makes the great sound. So what doesn't it deliver that the Lambo delivers? Well, the Lamborghini delivers that little extra special. It gets a little more attention if that's what you're after. But there's a more of a sense of occasion. I mean, the ride height's lower in the Lamborghini. You're sitting almost on the ground. The ride's even more fragile and more aggressive. It's rigid and almost to the point of car rattling when you're hitting bumps, just because it's so, again, the roads are rough and the car is very, very rigid. The steering is certainly more direct. The steering feels almost pretty much a 1-to-1 ratio, and it's very slow at low speeds. But I like that. I like that level of steering. It's a little heavy, but it feels like it should on that type of car. And another thing I've noticed regarding the driving differences is the brake feel. The brake feel in the Jag is very, again, I would say refined. There's sort of a nice progression to it. It's very progressive, and it's as you apply, it's almost a nice linear feel as you're applying the brakes in the Jag. It's not very stiff on the front end, on the top end, but it'll slow down very aggressively as you need it to. But consider this, the Jag is substantially heavier than the Lambo, so it feels the weight. You get more weight throwing around. You can just feel that. The Lamborghini feels a little lighter on its feet. So the brakes are more immediate. The brakes are more of an on-off switch on the Lambo, whereas the Jag is a little more linear. The, again, throttle response is pretty comparable, although I would say give that edge to the Lambo. I mean, with the Jag have far more low-end punch because of the V8 and the supercharger. It has a pretty good punch right off the hop, but the throttle response in the Lamborghini is electrifying. Here it's just a beast in the Jag. So it's great in the Jag, but it's, again, everything isn't quite as on the knife's edge as it is in the Lamborghini. Now, with that said, is this a great second fiddle? Well, some would consider this a second fiddle. Others would say, what are you complaining about? The Jag drives better and it's faster. What's not to like about it? So I guess you guys, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. You know, for the next little bit, I'll be driving pretty much just the Jag for funsies. I drive it every day anyway, but it looks like it'll also be strictly the funsie car as well. So I don't know if I'll be spending a lot of time in the Lamborghini in probably in the next few weeks anyhow. And then as winter rolls in, definitely the car will be parked, because it's not the snow that hurts these cars. It's all the garbage that this city throws down on the roads from that sloppy salt that eats away on the undercarriage, or the gravel that they pour down, you know, almost like you're driving in a gravel pit. You know, the city is pretty liberal with that. The city is pretty liberal with throwing all that garbage down. I mean, some of it's worthwhile. I mean, there's a lot of people that aren't prepared for driving in winter roads, so the city takes it upon themselves to take all these extra precautions, because not everybody seems to get the hint that they should be driving maybe on winter rubber. But anyway, either way, I'll be driving a little more in the Jag here coming up. So I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts down in the comment section below. Love to hear what your thoughts are. Is the Jaguar F-Type R a good replacement for the Lamborghini? Let's just ask the question, hypothetically, if the Lamborghini disappeared, would that be okay in your guys' eyes? Do you think a Lamborghini is all show and no go, or do you guys feel that no, there's really no replacement? I'd love to hear your comments down below as well. And as well too, please guys, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'd love to as well hear that you guys are coming back every time. Please drop in, say hi. You know what, I see a lot of the usual guys and folks out there reaching out on a regular basis, and you know, it does feel like a real community, and I do love to share my information, my experience, my knowledge, and little bit of wisdom that I might consider having, although I'm constantly learning about all of these things. I'd love to hear your comments, and please subscribe, guys. Hope to see you on the next one. Catch you next week. Bye-bye.